I cannot tell you how badly I wanted to see this movie. Every year there is that one movie you absolutely have to see in the cinemas, no buts, no questions asked. This year, Inside Out was that movie. Now there are other movies I've been looking forward to seeing. I've been looking forward to seeing Insurgent Pixels, Terminator 5 Genesis, but the movie I was most anticipated for all this year was this movie. It's no secret that Pixar haven't really been their best lately. Cars 2 was critically slammed by critics, audiences, and even the box office. Critics thought that Brave was just okay, and I personally think Brave is the worst Pixar film yet. And Monsters University was split. Some liked it and others didn't think it was very good. And then Pixar just vanished completely. There wasn't a single Pixar movie that was released in 2014. And now here in 2015 we get 2 Pixar movies. We've got Inside Out, and then later this year we're going to get The Good Dinosaur. So with so much anticipation, does Inside Out finally pay off? Well, let's face it, of course it does. It's Pixar, for crying out loud. Instead, why does Inside Out pay off? Let's find out. This is Inside Out. Inside Out is the latest Pixar movie, and it's about an 11-year-old girl named Riley who have these 5 basic emotions living inside her head: anger, fear, sadness, joy, and disgust. Or as I like to call that last one, teenagehood. Come on, don't act like it's not true. The emotions actually control Riley in her headquarters inside her mind, and they guide her through everyday life. That is brilliant. This is such a creative idea, and I absolutely love this movie's premise, and I'm not going to tell you anything about the story itself. Now, some people seem to say that this movie was more aimed for kids than it was for adults, and others say the exact opposite, saying that this movie was more aimed for adults than it was for kids. I can see both kids and adults really enjoying this film, but for completely different reasons. And when you look at this movie from both the perspective of a kid and as an adult, it's not really even the same movie. The kids will like it because it's a fun, flashy, animated movie, and it's about a nice, fun adventure. But when you watch it as an adult and teenager, you actually realize something. This is actually a really complicated movie. I'll go more in detail about this when I start talking about the emotions themselves, but this movie is really complicated and really mature, in fact. I absolutely love the system in Riley's head. It's really creative and it's really well constructed, and it basically explains everything about our personalities. I swear, everyone leaving this film is probably wondering what the headquarters looks like in our own heads. It's not just the system in Riley's head, the overall story is really well constructed. For me, for a Pixar movie to succeed, I think it needs 3 aspects. It needs complex characters, it needs good humor, and it also really needs good emotion. Those are the 3 aspects to making a great Pixar film, and Inside Out delivers all 3 of those perfectly. I love the way the story is constructed in this movie. But it's not just the system, the overall script is really well written. You really do root for the emotions to succeed in the climax. And the humor's also done really well. In fact, I would have to say that this is probably one of the funniest Pixar movies ever made. I love the way the jokes work in this movie. If you're worried about this movie having peeing, pooping, burping, or farting jokes in this movie, then don't worry, this movie has none of that. This movie actually has legit humor. It's got a couple of jokes that maybe the kids will find funny, but this movie's humor is actually aimed for an older audience. Not to say that it's crude, although there is one slightly crude joke at the end of the movie that I was laughing hysterically at, but most of the older audience jokes is that they're jokes that only the teenagers and the adults are going to understand because the jokes are pointed directly to the emotions themselves. The way each emotion reacts to each situation and the one-liners and their reactions are absolutely hilarious. But at the same time, this movie isn't always just trying to make you laugh. This movie also has some really emotional scenes. I swear, I am trying my hardest not to make that a pun. But seriously, this movie is actually really emotionally touching. it actually gets really deep, and there's actually even a scene that caused me to shed a couple of tears. Not very big tears, mind you, but I did actually get emotionally touched by a scene in this movie. And I should say that I do not cry in movies easily. The only other movie that's ever made me cry is the first Toy Story movie, where Buzz Lightyear breaks his arm. Only 2 movies have ever made me cry, and both of those movies are by Pixar. That's an accomplishment, Pixar. I'm impressed. Keep it up. Now it's time to talk about the emotions themselves, which is where this movie really shines. I love how all the emotions actually have a job within Riley's head. Joy's job is to naturally make sure that Riley's having a happy life. Anger's job is to make sure everything stays fair. Fear's job is to make sure that Riley remains safe. And Disgust's job is to make sure that Riley's not poisoned. Now, Sadness's job is actually a lot more complicated, something that's actually explored with problems throughout the entire movie, so I'm just not going to even mention Sadness's job here. I also love how the emotions actually have absolute control over you. Not only do they control what you do, but they also control your personality and your interests. For an example, Riley doesn't like broccoli, but that's actually because Disgust thinks that broccoli is actually poisonous. Yeah, this movie is full of jokes like that. While each emotion is basically the emotion they are named after, for example, anger is angry, sadness is always upset, but emotionally this movie gets really complex. I absolutely love the complexity of the emotion in this movie. One example I mean by this is that joy and sadness have a really big character development, making their emotion a lot more complex than just a simple emotion they're named after. While joy is definitely the most positive emotion out of the 5, she actually develops, grows, and actually learns a lot about emotion throughout the entire movie. She actually learns several lessons. She also learns about being more trusting with her friends. Not to mention, as I pointed out before, these characters are just really fun to watch, and they are really fascinating in my opinion. These emotions actually really fascinate me. I could be watching them forever and I would not get bored. And in terms of the antagonist, well, this movie doesn't actually have an antagonist. Yeah, there is not a single villain in this entire movie. But, unlike Frozen, it actually works in this movie's favour. Like I said, this movie is really emotionally complex, and with the complexity of the emotions the characters are going through, not to mention overall plot, adding an antagonist into the story will definitely overcrowd the movie. You wouldn't have enough time to be able to focus on everything, and it would just be too much for the movie to handle. So, this movie doesn't have an antagonist or a villain, but it works in the movie's favour. But what about the animation? How does the animation look in this movie? It looks beautiful. This movie looks absolutely gorgeous. I just love the texture and detail in all of the characters, especially the emotions in Riley's head. I also love the design for all of the emotions. I feel like the design fits their characters perfectly. And not to mention the amount of texture and detail. I mean, look at those eyes. Good gosh, look at those eyes! This movie looks absolutely beautiful, and I love every single minute of it. Well, almost every single minute of it. If there's one thing I have to criticize about this movie, it's this one scene. There is a scene where Joy, Sadness, and another surprise character I won't spoil for you, they go through this area which is forbidden. It basically distorts their design, and I feel like this was one of the few jokes that just fell flat on its face, and it was just there just to make the kiddies laugh. And I was just sitting there going, okay, this scene is kind of unnecessary. But seriously, that is my only problem with this entire movie. Take out that one scene, and this movie would be perfect. I would have no problems with this movie. But saying that Inside Out is a good movie is an incredible understatement. It's a great movie. Oh my gosh, I love this movie. I actually am going to give it the crown for my favourite animated movie of all time. Better than Big Hero 6, better than Coraline, heck, even better than the Toy Story trilogy. Inside Out is a phenomenal movie, and it's my favourite animated film of all time. Definitely the best Pixar film of all time. I personally cannot wait until Inside Out comes out on DVD because I will hands down buy this movie on Blu-ray. It's that good. If you have not yet seen this movie, please do, because let me tell you that you are missing out. I was in such a hurry to get this review done for you guys. In fact, I only just saw the movie yesterday. This movie has everything. It's funny, it's emotional, it's got a good story, it's got great characters, it's got a really gorgeous looking animation. It has everything. I'm Supersonic Corey, signing off. See you in my next video. Cheers.